Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And we are at the All-Star break in this 2037 season. Got some feedback since the last episode on what we did in the draft. I'd have to say it's probably one of our generally less popular decisions at the top of the draft. As it turned out, we were only going to get one guy that we really liked because the guy that we picked in the first round certainly would have been off the board by the time we made our second round selection. And unfortunately, the 6 or 7 other guys that we liked the most all came off the board before our next selection. Follow up on a couple of comments and some remarks I made to Why Me 943 and Raven Spawn 3 in the comments to the past episode. We ended up going up with shortstop Michael McCottrell as our first round selection, and still think he can be a very interesting player for us with that potentially outstanding contact, gap power, speed, and eye combination. Like the high work ethic, think he can be pretty interesting defensively. If we have some good luck in the development lab with his defense and his stealing and base running, he could become a very more interesting player. I know the lack of home run power is definitely a turnoff to some people. He was ultimately the guy that I liked the best. But as I did say in the comments, I think if I were to have played this over 100 times and could somehow do that, I didn't have an incredibly strong view. Probably would have went with Michael McCottrell about a third of the time. Probably would have went with the college pitcher Mark Canfield about a third of the time. Probably would have went with the college shortstop David Hood about a third of the time. And there's a chance that I would have went with the high school pitcher Alex Morales a handful of times as well. Kind of interesting to see that the Chicago White Sox, who we've faced in the last couple of World Series, had both of the supplemental picks in the draft this year. Actually, we've faced them in the last 4 World Series at this point. But I certainly didn't have a real strong view on the draft in general. As I talked about, the worldwide scouting department tended to favor the pitchers. I will say part of the reason I didn't end up going with the starting pitcher Matt Canfield, despite the fact that he certainly looks like a very interesting candidate on the mound, is that I've had a pretty poor performance with college pitchers that I have taken early in the draft since this playthrough, which I'll talk about right now. Our first draft in 2025, we took Jamie Arnold. He ended up spending parts of 2 seasons in the majors with us, retired at the age of 27, and had an ERA of around 5 in the 63 2/3 innings that he ended up pitching. A year after we picked him, we picked Zane Petty in the second round out of Texas Tech. He never even made it above Double-A before he retired at the age of 25. A couple years after that, we took the high school pitcher James Embry out of St. Peter's in the second round. He pitched 17 games in the majors with an ERA in the mid-5s, retired at the age of 28. And then a bit more recently, we also failed in 2031 when we took Brian Stoops in the first round out of New Mexico State. He is still having a career at this point, and compared to those other guys, has a somewhat more legitimate major league career. He was a 5th starter for us for much of 2033 and 2034, and he did win 3 World Series with us over his tenure with the Rockies. But over his time with the Rockies, hit an ERA in the mid-5s, and although he has pitched now at this point, parts of 5 seasons in the major leagues, his career ERA is close to 6. So he certainly has not produced either. More recently, David Guadron, who we took with a supplemental first-round pick a couple of years ago, certainly looking like he could by far be the best of these college pitchers that we've taken, but doesn't look like he's going to be an ace by any stretch of the imagination. Has been much better this year than his rookie year when he put up a 5.34 ERA, or I guess this might technically be his rookie year here, but when he made his major league debut in 2036, 5.34 ERA. His ERA is below 3 this year, so he's been much more effective for us at the age of 24. But his profile certainly is of a player who looks more like a back end of the rotation type of starter rather than anyone who's going to be a big-time performer. And unfortunately, we took Evan Kluver with our first-round pick a year ago out of San Diego, and he made his major league debut for us earlier this year, has an ERA of close to 6 over 15 and 2/3 innings pitched. Doesn't even necessarily look like he's going to be as good as Guadron, and a best-case scenario for him kind of looks like a fifth starter, middle-long relief type, and he has certainly deteriorated quite precipitously over the last year since we picked him and thought that he had a lot more potential than has actually been realized or we think is there today. So 6 pitchers out of college over the course of this playthrough in the first or second rounds, and we haven't hit on any of them yet. Now, certainly that's perhaps an argument that we should have taken Canfield this year because we were due to hit, and certainly not going to rule out taking college pitchers early in the draft down the line, but did think it's kind of interesting that I have had a almost stunning lack of success in this playthrough with the college pitchers that we have picked early. So as we begin this relatively brief episode, we've got about a week and a half left until we get to the trade deadline. We are, as I noted, on the All-Star break right now. Rockies in really good shape, 10.5 games up on the Dodgers. Looks like we are in a very good position to have home field advantage throughout the National League playoffs at the very least, with a 6.5 game lead on the Mets and the Brewers in the standings. Our old nemesis, the White Sox, however, are only 3 games behind us in the race for the best record in all of baseball. And if recent postseasons are a trend that will be followed, we could end up facing the White Sox again in the World Series this year, in which case we would certainly prefer to have home field advantage on them. The Astros also lurking 2.5 games behind us in the race for the best record in baseball. Don't know if I did the math right there. Yeah, I think I did. It's kind of weird with the number of games that people have played. The White Sox have a slightly higher winning percentage than the Astros, but the Astros are technically closer to us in the standings if we were to look at the number of the games that they're behind, which is just one of those quirks of numbers, I suppose. But feeling good about the team when we take a look at our team statistics here. We've had the best offense in the National League throughout the season. You can see we're leading the league in just about every offensive category. The only exceptions, 4th in homers, 9th in strikeouts, tied for 2nd in steals. Pretty solid defensive team. We're 6th in the National League in runs allowed. Our bullpen has been outstanding. Our starters have been good, but not great. But overall, still a very good team. The 63-33 record, right in line with what we should be doing. 12-6 here in the month of July. So I don't feel like we necessarily have to go crazy thinking about bringing on some help. We did our mid-season review a couple episodes ago. Always would love the opportunity to add a big-time starting pitcher. You could argue that maybe an infielder with a big bat who's healthy could certainly be an asset for us to consider bringing on board. But to be honest, there's not a lot of holes on this team, and as much as we are a win-now team, unless there is a very interesting offer out there for us, I do fear it may be a bit of a quiet trade deadline for us. Taking a look at the starting pitchers who are available, I think one that's been mentioned by viewers in the past, and I would agree is probably one of the more interesting options out there, is the veteran Roki Sasaki. He is really, for us at this point, a fourth or fifth starter when we look at his skill set. 6-4 with a 4.53 ERA for Texas, but a 2.5 WAR, so certainly having a good solid season. But he's making real money, $29.4 million this year and $29.4 million next year, because he's got that big contract. Not going to be that expensive to trade for. I mean, we could trade away Luke Dickerson straight up, a guy who was with us a year ago, who we signed to a minor league contract this year and is just sitting in AAA for us. Plenty of other guys that we could offer to bring Sasaki on board. But part of the reason we weren't particularly aggressive this past offseason is that we wanted to set ourselves up to maintain some payroll flexibility for this next upcoming offseason, when I think there still is potential, and we can check on this now, for the Chicago White Sox outstanding two-way player to potentially become a free agent. And yeah, it does still look like they haven't signed Connor Camo, who is a pretty good pitcher with an 8-6 record and a 3.83 ERA this year. And he's also a pretty interesting two-way player, hitting .270 this year, 16 homers, 45 ribbies, 131 WRC plus. Certainly no guarantees that Camo ultimately makes it to the free agent market this offseason. But when you look at a guy like him being out there, and even some of these other guys, Mike Windsor looks like he could be healthy by free agent time. Eric Gordon, John Meadows also likely to just be getting healthy around free agency. Some interesting potential starting pitchers who could be on the free agent market this upcoming offseason. And then when we look at the batters, one of the most notable is unfortunately our own outfielder, Ted Miller, who hitting .254, 12 homers, 58 ribbies this year. We've had the opportunity to re-sign him over the years. Haven't done that yet. We do like his left-handed bat, particularly against right-handed pitching. Still looking for about $19.5 million a year. Does want an 8-year contract with some player options in it. That price has been pretty consistent over the last several months of game time. At some point, we're going to have to aggressively make a decision on what we want to do with Miller. But with the money he's looking for, that could certainly box us out of the opportunity to go after somebody like Camo if they do end up on the free agent market this upcoming year. So could be some interesting free agents out there, as you can see. And you also never know what you're going to get in terms of the international free agents. But long story short, back to what we were talking about, although the price to potentially bring on board Mr. Sasaki is not crazy in terms of what we'd have to give up in a trade, spending close to $30 million on him at his age next year, when he's realistically a fourth, or honestly, if we don't have injuries, a fifth starter for us. And that's injuries to this current team. If we had Noah Schultz back in the lineup right now, our longtime ace, and then more recently number 2 starter, Sasaki is kind of a long reliever for us, and with the money he's looking for, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. Taking a look at the batters who are available, don't need help at catcher, where Mike Grant and Gabriel Moreno, a couple of guys who could be free agents, as you probably saw, were on the market as potential rentals. John Musselman, another catcher out there. Certainly are some interesting looking infielders, but I don't know that there's anyone who's absolutely a difference maker. Adrian Santana, certainly with that defense, would be very interesting, and like the fact that he's a switch hitter. Is in the final year of his contract, but he's 32 years old. He's wrecked physically. Probably not someone we can completely count on to be in the lineup every day, but as a defensive substitute, still could be a very interesting guy to bring on board. Kind of interesting looking at that defensive profile and the fact that he's been in the majors for 9 years, that he only has that lone Gold Glove award 3 years ago in 2034. Looking at the trade options for him, and he's actually incredibly expensive as a rental. We're certainly not going to give up any of the top prospects or top players in our organization to bring him on board, and that would be the cost for Mr. Santana. So I'll continue investigating the potential options on the trade market, but not necessarily thinking that we're going to do anything too aggressive at this point unless we have some major injuries over this next week and a half, or the price for some of these guys drops materially, and I'm certainly not anticipating that. And we took 2 out of 3 coming out of the All-Star break in Cincinnati. The All-Star game, the American League won 8-2, so not too much interesting to speak of in terms of the performances of our players in the game. 5 games left now until we get to the trade deadline, all on the road at Atlanta and then at the Mets before we'll get to the month of August. Taking a look at the standings now, Dodgers have won all 3 that they've played since the All-Star break, so they've closed the gap on us to 9.5 games. Still feeling pretty confident about our chances to win the division and ultimately hopefully end up with the best record in all of baseball. And Johnny Castillo has been hot lately with some home runs after the All-Star break to now be leading the league in homers alone. So we still have a chance at getting the team triple crown this year, with J.D. Lee still leading the league in hitting, although his batting average has been steadily coming down. The rookie Johnny Castillo leading the league in home runs, and Kevin Roberts Jr. leading the league in ribbies, although it looks like he is dealing with a bruised shoulder that's going to impact his throwing a bit for the next several days. And I just noticed with us checking in on 5 Tools, Kevin Roberts Jr., he's certainly been one of our most successful draft picks. We picked him 5th overall in 2026. And it's his birthday today. Happy birthday to Kevin Roberts Jr. at the age of 29. Look at what he's done in his career at this point. 284 career hitter, 241 homers, 712 ribbies, just over 1,000 hits. So even though he started his career as a 22-year-old and he's had an outstanding career for us with 3 MVP awards at this point and a boatload of postseason MVP awards, certainly doesn't look like he's going to be threatening the all-time leaders in categories like hits and home runs. Certainly would think he's a big long shot to get to 3,000 hits in his career with barely over 1,000 at the age of 29. Does have an outside shot at getting 500 home runs. In fact, if he stays healthy, given that he's basically been putting up 35-ish plus home runs a year through most of his career, and he's certainly on his way towards that number again this year. Certainly 500 doesn't seem unrealistic, and could have a shot at 600 as well. Already has a career WAR of over 40, so don't think he's necessarily going to be threatening the likes of Pete Rose and Barry Bonds and Hank Aaron in some of the big career batting categories, but still has definite potential to put together a very interesting career for us. And other than Kevin Roberts Jr., really nobody banged up. As we talked about, our number 2 starter, Noah Schultz, gone for the year after missing just 3 games. Mike Girard, who has played only 71 games for us over the previous 2 seasons at the major league level, suffered a setback in his comeback this past offseason and is going to miss this entire year for us. So we knew we would be without Girard when the season started. We knew we would be without Schultz very soon after this season started. The acquisition of J.D. Lee in the trade market was made knowing that Girard was going to be an issue. Still have the potential to potentially make a move for the pitching staff, but we don't hate the top 4 in our rotation. Leo Martinez certainly having an off year. Bob Russell solid, Aaron Bell solid, and Bernie Barrera solid as well. So still really like our pitching staff overall as we sit here on July 27th. If we were to suffer an injury to one of those top 4 guys, Guadron, as we've talked about, has been pretty respectable for us this season, but certainly not viewing him as a top-of-the-line starter. If there's a guy that we can bring in who's at a reasonable price in terms of what he's making and what we have to give up to bring him on board, certainly would do it. I just don't know that there's that guy out there this year. And while the crop of pitchers available, particularly starters, on the trade block is unchanged since the last time we checked in and just not that inspiring, I don't have a real strong bid to add another 4th or 5th starter type, particularly if they're making some big money. Very interesting player recently added to the trade block, and not the type of guy that you often see. Eddie Portillo, a 23-year-old second baseman with a really interesting bat. He was an international free agent signing 6.5 years ago in 2031. Pretty impressive bat. He's been an above-average offensive player with the Royals since they brought him up, although more of a league-average offensive player this year, but a guy with 20-plus home run power, pretty solid batting average historically, having a down year by his standards, but he's also a competent defensive player. Not a lot of speed, and it seems like he may be having some issues in the clubhouse, low leadership, loyalty, and work ethic, although he does have high baseball IQ. But certainly you see a player like that on the trade block and feel like perhaps we've got a strong enough clubhouse to bring somebody like him on board. Unfortunately, as you might suspect, we've got nobody who the Royals will take straight up for him in a trade, which is a bit silly. If we were to add the young outfielder Mike Castro, who's signed to a pretty interesting contract, maybe the reason they can't do much is that they don't have really any financial flexibility, so that probably makes it even harder, although they could take a prospect if they wanted to. But you see, we offer Castro, we offer to keep 75% of his contract, which, although he's not making much this year, given that we just signed him to a long extension, is not an immaterial consideration. and they still say 0 chance of that happening, and there's nobody else that we can add in to make the deal happen. Even if we were to add in Nils Mensch, Eric Schweitzer, Jesse Hoffmeister, 3 top prospects in our organization, the price that the Royals will be asking for Eddie Portillo, who is, as we mentioned, not necessarily the best in the clubhouse, is frighteningly prohibitive, as we've talked about at times in the past. The hardest trade setting sometimes ends up just meaning stubborn stupidity from the AI, because certainly any team would likely make the trade that we have just proposed if they were on the side of the Kansas City Royals. And we swept our 3 games in Atlanta with some dominant pitching, allowing just 1 run in each of those 3 games. So 2 left now against the Mets. I'm going to spend a little more time offline before simming through those games, seeing if there might be something to do in the trade market, whether or not it's somebody on the trade block or just another opportunity out there, but not particularly optimistic that we're going to do anything impactful here unless we suffer a very major injury over these next couple days. And the Rangers are really eager to get Sasaki off their books, even if they have to eat a huge amount of his contract. They would keep 70% of the contract, which would mean we'd be responsible for about a little over $9 million of his contract prorated this year and then next year. And we really don't have to give them anything in return. Minor league pitcher Vinny Kahina, a 28-year-old who's never pitched above Double-A for us, will get it done. Obviously, there's plenty of other options that would get it done as well. But given that really Sasaki for us is a 5th starter this year, we would move at this point the youngster Guadron to the pen to let Sasaki be our 5th starter. He's a nice insurance policy if one of those top 4 guys were to get hurt, which is a team that's trying to win it all again this year. Certainly has some value. But I want to keep our options as open as they could possibly be this upcoming off season. And I don't really want to have a $9 million commitment to Sasaki on the books for a guy who, as I mentioned, once Schultz is back, if our team is completely healthy, isn't even actually in our starting rotation. And we now have Jeff Colson, former first-round pick, who's done a pretty nice job for us this year in the bullpen. 3.67 ERA for him over 41 2/3 innings pitched. Started pitching out of the bullpen more recently after Guadron got healthy again. But just don't feel like we have to chase anything. Obviously, if we were to lose a Martinez or a Russell in particular, that's going to impact our chances in the playoffs. But I don't see Sasaki being a huge upgrade over the likes of Guadron and Colson. And honestly, he's got a pretty similar profile to Barrera at this point. But Barrera is around a decade younger, durable, and certainly cheaper. So it doesn't seem like we're going to do much of anything, or more accurately, anything, at the trade deadline here in 2037. And of course, as we approach the trade deadline, lost 2 in a row to the Mets, both in extra innings, to leave us feeling less certain about things. But as you can see, we've made it to August 1st, and we've done nothing but stand pat at the trade deadline this year. Finished July with a strong 17-9 record, still the best offense in the National League, now tied for 5th in runs allowed. As we take a look at the standings heading into the final 2 months of the season, back up by 11.5 on the Dodgers, who have lost 4 in a row. The Mets at 60-42, 6 games behind us in the standings. So feeling, or actually 7 games behind us in the standings, if I could do some simple math in my head. The White Sox, 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 5 in a row at 66-36. Our old rivals just 1 game behind us in the standings for the best record in all of baseball. So as we look forward to the next episode in these last couple months of this season, I think the interesting thing to follow is whether we can remain healthy, and if we can remain healthy, whether we'll be able to hold off the White Sox for the best record in all of baseball. We've faced them in 4 consecutive World Series at this point. Certainly would think that both our Rockies and the White Sox in the American League would be the betting favorites again to get back to a 5th consecutive World Series. And having home field advantage could end up being very important when all is said and done. And we'll find out whether we can hold on to the NL West, hold on to the best record in the NL, hold on to the best record in all of baseball, and also avoid any significant injuries down the stretch in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.